Okay, we are live for our discussion of Lemez Part 3 or Volume 3, Marius. I feel like this one had a lot of build up for like 90% of it, except for the last one was a huge section. So,
yeah.
What was it, 90 pages for one book?
Mm-hmm.
So long.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was exciting.
Well, we're happy to have you, Shauna, as long as you can be here. But yes, no, that was an interesting section for sure. I liked parts of it, and then other parts were just really, I don't know, pointless, it felt. And then they all kind of came together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of character details going through all of the students and all of their characters as well, and like their character traits. That was a big section as well, just going through all the students.
Yeah. I feel like it's setting up for like part 4. That's what I feel like it's setting up part 4.
Yeah.
Lots more political detail as well.
Mm-hmm.
Getting
all
us
that
ready
about the revolution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a good time to do the readathon because I think that's what really was needing a push with those sections.
Yes.
Yeah. I hope that did help people.
It was lots of fun.
It was lots of fun.
Good idea.
That was the main thing for me. Oh, thank you. Yep. That was really fun. Lots of hanging out. I only read about 3% of the book during that, but still.
We're over halfway now. We're at like what, almost 60%? I feel like that's a win. That's an accomplishment.
It is. I know. I feel like everybody should feel very good if you've made it this far. Like you are a trooper. Like good job, everyone who made it this far.
I was looking at the bookmark and it's like, look, that's the back half. That's the back half. That's impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. So we are on the downward now. So woohoo.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a nice
feeling. The next
feeling.
section's big, but we can get through it. We've gotten through big sections before.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm hoping for, hey, hi, Amanda. Welcome. Yeah. I'm wondering if there's going to be as much like explanations and like, I don't know, side things in the second half. Because like in the Hunchback of Notre Dame, there was definitely some long sections. But not this many. So I'm just wondering if there will ever be a point where it's like straight story for a while.
I'm beginning to wonder if Hugo ever had an editor on this. Like, if he ever had an editor.
Yeah, I would imagine it worked differently back then. I don't know how involved an editor would have been even to change stuff. I don't know.
Good question. I mean, I know like War and Peace, like Tolstoy's wife had to write it out. Like, I think it was the whole thing many, many times. So, I mean, that's dedication and love or penitence, whatever you want to call it. But I feel like with this is kind of the same thing. Hi, Krista.
Hey, Krista. Hey,
yes,
Tammy.
We just started.
John.
Yes. Hello.
From Australia.
I wonder what time it is there.
What time is it in Australia?
Is it 17 hours? Something? Yes. Hi. Oh, so what to talk about in this one? I feel like there's just so much buildup. But
yeah.
I don't know. The last chapter or like the last book really was full of meat, but the first section of that was like just so much.
Like Victoria said, there was lots of characters early on. Oh wow!
Oh my goodness!
Thanks for joining us in the middle of the morning.
Thank you for joining us.
You must really enjoy this book.
We could go from like the beginning of the book and just kind of go through and talk about our major plot points and sections. Yeah, we like the last book. Yeah, this section. Yeah, it was. I don't know if it was rough for me. I actually enjoyed the details more in this section than I did in book 2. Because it was. I think I just enjoyed seeing some new characters and Marius's development, and like Marius's whole thing is he's kind of introduced as like the representation of the new generation, right? Of the new generation of the new republic, the new republic versus the old regime. So I did really enjoy the introduction of Marius to provide that contrast. So did you guys have any thoughts on like Marius versus his grandfather? So we meet his grandfather, who is like very much of another age, right? Of like a dying age in French history at this time.
Yeah. I think one thing that I noticed, like, because I read some summaries as well, every time I feel like it's better for me to just understand what's going on culturally from like what people smarter than me have put together. And what someone said is that like he's very flexible, and I feel like that's also very true with like the new revolutionaries compared to the old revolutionaries or the old mentality, because that really showed itself in book 8 when he is not wanting to fire the gun, but at the same time he's not wanting to let them get away with murdering Mont Blanc, who is actually Valjean. However, he like throws the paper down, so he's kind of doing an in-between, so it shows the flexibility of him. And I feel like that's actually showing the way that he's not like full on new revolution, but at the same time he's also not anti, because at the same time he was also not in the ABC club, but he's also not his grandfather's mentality.
I think he's going to be in the ABC club. I think that's
but he's not there yet. Like he's not fitting in perfectly because he doesn't have their views. So he's like in the middle. He's in the middle of a lot of things. At least right now, at least that's what my thoughts are.
Okay. Hey, Kat. Yeah,
he's finding himself.
I felt the same way. I liked this section a little bit more than previously.
I felt like I would have maybe enjoyed it if I'd been able to sit down and read it and focus on it, but at the same time there was just so much extraneous detail that even if I had sat down and tried to enjoy it, I would have had to go really slowly, and there was just not enough story for me in this section. There was just too much extraneous detail, too many characters. Yeah. I don't even mind some of the political stuff or whatever, but yeah, too many characters, that goes over my head. Because it's like, are these really that important? Even though it was funny, like some of the descriptions of like, the robber band, I was sitting down and reading that one. So he called it a monstrous polyp of evil, which I thought was really funny. Like, that's hilarious. There's a lot of kind of Dickensian kind of language and stuff like that, but it's just so long. That section was really hard for me. Every time I would listen to it, I would get like bored in long sections, and so I would stop listening to it and I would listen to something else. I read a lot of other things during this last 2 weeks, or listened to, but yeah, I had a really, really hard time getting into this section.
I think I'm the same way, where I'm like, I need enough plot to keep me interested. Like, I love good character development, but I need plot too. So to have only characters for so long was tricky.
Yeah. It did end up coming together, like you guys were saying.
Yeah.
At the end, most of the characters end up being important to a specific scene, but it's kind of like going into the whole long length of Waterloo just for that ending scene. It's like the same idea. It's like, did we need all of those characters? Not really. Not that in depth.
Right. I think it's the level of information we get about some of the minor characters that sometimes you're like, okay, Mr. Hugo.
Yeah.
I need all this information about everyone in the ABC.
Yeah.
But
Or that
I
could have
will,
come later, maybe like down the line or after the fact, more plot throughout.
mhm. To play devil's advocate a little bit though, I do think we get some really important characters in this section, and I think one of them that can easily be overlooked is Gavroche and everything that he represents, and his importance. So little Gavroche was the forgotten child of the
Mhm.
Thénardiers, right? He is put out on the street. They do not care about him, and he becomes one of the street urchins. And Hugo has this whole section about the the homeless youth basically of Paris and how and like that whole population. Um, and so I think he's one of I think he's one of the miserables or the unfortunates, right? Um, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on him as a character?
I liked seeing him in there, and I also like seeing him being bookend by the whole volume, essentially, because I think it was really informative to see, like, at the very beginning, this child, we didn't know who he was, and at the very end, see that he was actually, well, like, at the beginning, you kind of, if you are intuitive enough, you can see that he is actually the forgotten or the abandoned child of the Thénardiers, and then at the very end, you see him coming back, and he's actually way more happy than his siblings or his sisters and his parents because he's been actually kicked out, and they are living basically starving in a single room home and living from as many extortions as they can. Like, it's just very interesting to see that bookend. So I appreciate seeing his character as little as we saw of him.
Mm-hmm. The Thénardiers are really interesting to me as well because they all their schemes have led to just more poverty, right? So Hugo's kind of showing us their corruption is actually hurting them rather than building them up. They're actually much worse off than they used to be, right? They used to
Mhm.
own an inn, and then he had some debt, but then Valjean paid that debt for him basically through blackmail. But
They haven't learned, and that's the
they haven't
problem.
learned, exactly. They haven't learned, and you're kind of seeing their descent as well in this section.
Yeah, Tammy has some thoughts on Marius. Yeah, and then I think he's tempered both ways, I think.
Yeah, I hadn't realized, I hadn't noticed that. I was thinking the friends of the ABC were going to like make Marius an extremist with them, kind of. But we'll see. I don't
That
know.
could be next section.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of like. Maybe that's what's going to
In the
happen.
movie, he's just like pure extremist. So yeah,
Yeah.
we'll have to see how.
Yeah, well, in the
This
This
movie,
does
but
it.
Jean Valjean isn't tortured and almost killed. So
Yeah, yeah.
that's
There's a
kind of the
lot of
thing.
different, or a lot less detail. It's just more
I liked
blunted.
how that was not in the movie because I'm like, what is this scene? And I could not take my eyes off of it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. That was really interesting.
Yes. Yeah, exactly,
Mhm.
Tammy. So Hugo paints Gavroche as an ideal almost, as far as his character. He has grit and street smarts, and he's while he's an unfortunate, he's actually elevated in a different way than some of the other less fortunate people that we've seen so far. Because Gavroche can take care of himself, and I think Hugo is really bringing that to your attention. He's thriving on the streets because of his inner character.
Yes, we will have to put that on the list to potentially watch. And I'm going to put that on my
Yes,
list to watch. Yeah.
me too.
Mhm. I think it's interesting how Garbosh, he's just so minor of a character, but at the same time he shows how decrepit the Tharnadiers are. And at the same time, he also just thrives so much more because of being abandoned essentially as like a baby from not having his mother's love. Like if he'd been loved by that awful mother, things would have been way worse for him.
Ah,
Which is
yes.
just it's just so sad and so heartbreaking.
No, but he would be actually worse off. Like he would have been in that corrupt environment, but he didn't really grow up in that corrupt environment. You know, he grew up on the streets, and that actually was better for him.
He had no love whatsoever when he was little because his parents didn't, or his mother didn't want him. She wanted the daughters, who then suffer more.
Yeah. Yes, and we do see the daughters older now, and how they're not in good shape, right? And they're just used by their family. We see them in rags. Where we have this contrast is we used to see Cosette in rags, and they were taken very, very good care of, right? And now we see that flipped. We see Cosette is kind of the Cinderella story, where Cosette now has nice clothes, is taken care of, and then the two Thenardier daughters are now the ones in rags.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was so interesting listening to it on audio, which I listened to it on audio with a different translation reading, and it was just so funny, some of the words that they used, because like the audiobook was when they were talking about how Marius made a mistake about the name, and it was like he made a couple mistakes, and one of them was a whopper, and that was the audiobook, and then the book said it was and one of them was immense. It was like just I like the word whopper instead. But it was just so interesting when the audiobook did it, because when suddenly Epatine's voice came on, it was like and it was like so deep and gravelly, and I'm like, wow, how well done was that? I was really impressed with the audiobook, at least with like portraying how different that character was, because you would have totally thought an old man, but that's what they were going for, because that's what life has brought her down to essentially, and she's not that old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he mentions like if you weren't looking at her, you would think you were listening to an old man's voice.
And it was perfectly done in the book or the audiobook.
Nice.
What are your thoughts, Christy? Anything on the last book or anything in general?
Well, from what I actually got to sit down and read with my eyes, there were lots of beautiful descriptions and stuff, or funny descriptions, but there's one section where he's talking. I don't even remember exactly what's going on in this section, but he finally kind of spells out his philosophy about crime, I guess, which was destroy the cave ignorance and you destroy the mole crime. So I was like, oh, that's very straightforward. He finally spells out kind of one of his theories. I feel like a lot of times it takes him a while to get there, and you have to like find the gem line where it's like, oh, that's it. That's why you're saying all of this so roundabout. So that's, I guess, one of his philosophical tenets that he's sort of basing the whole story around. I have found with Hugo that he very much has messages that he wants to convey, and everything is kind of a metaphor about that.
Yeah.
So,
well, do we agree with him or do we disagree with him? Can you abolish crime?
No. I just totally disagree with that. But I think it was reasonable for him to think that, because in his time, not everybody had access to the same stuff that like we do in America. And here in America, we still definitely have crime, even though everybody is in a much better position as far as getting education and stuff like that. And some of the most horrendous criminals that have existed in America were very intelligent and did great in school and, stuff like that. So I just disagree.
Yeah, me as well. but it's an interesting idea.
Yes.
Interesting idea. Yes. This is a great quote. Peace is happiness digesting. He has some great quotes. Like Hugo really can come up with brilliant ideas and brilliantly written thoughts. So
Yeah, that's great.
that was a great one, Amanda.
I love that.
Yeah.
Something that brought up, I'm curious your thoughts on this. Something that was brought up by Kat in our Discord discussions was she was disturbed by Marius being a bit stalkery towards Cosette and like full pursuit of Cosette and how his obsession. And I don't it was interesting. I hadn't really thought about it till Kat had brought it up, but I think Hugo was trying to write it as like pure love, perhaps, or I don't know. I'm not sure what Hugo wanted it to come across, but to us, it does come across as like, Marius, you need to calm down. You do not know her. Like, it's like he has like a love at first sight kind of thing, where he's like, I am obsessed with this girl. I was curious of how you guys read that section.
It is a French novel, so you know.
Yeah, I'm not very experienced with reading French novels, to be honest. So I'm like getting used to it. But I do think it was a little creepy from our modern perspective. And I always think like whenever I'm reading a classic, I have to look at it through a modern change to classic lens. So it's definitely something where if you were reading now, like from a modern work, that'd be like you're being a stalker. But it's hard because clearly it's romantic and it's just yeah. And you also, as you read the whole of volume 3, you see that he doesn't know Cosette at all. He doesn't know her name. He doesn't know where she lives. He doesn't know anything about her. So
Ursula.
And that's like her father's handkerchief. He knows nothing about her. So he clearly needs to get to know her. I think that's just something where yeah, I think it's something where he's in like a crush land kind of idea, but he needs to. I think it's just showing, his reality right now, which is not the reality.
His mental landscape. He kind of goes from obsessive thing to obsessive thing, and that's like what his life is about. It has some descriptions of Marius's character in here that, yeah, I think he's found what his life revolves around, but he can't get closer to it, and it's kind of driving him crazy. He knows it's something good. He just can't get further into it right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I also don't know too much about the like social, I don't know, constructions or like the social restrictions of the day, and how they would have limited their interactions because of them being complete strangers, like how they could have gone up and talked to each other, or if he could have done that. So
we have Jean Valjean is the barrier there, right?
Completely. But like if he would have been able to introduce himself in any way, shape, or form, if that's even allowed, because of also her standing and just being complete strangers, if someone has to introduce them first. I don't know if those are things that has to happen in French at that time, or in France at that time. So if those are the case, then then he has to just make up in his mind what's the best alternative.
I guess it probably depends on where you are in society somewhat, because like with Fontaine, earlier in the novel, of course, this was also much earlier in French society.
Time-period-wise.
Yeah, exactly. But there was just dalliances happening, without marriage. They weren't upper class or anything. So it probably does depend somewhat on what level of propriety you have to maintain.
Yeah.
Who are you trying to impress?
Yeah. So all of those things, I'm sure, played into his ability to actually talk to her and then therefore get to know her as a person, as opposed to just a little schoolyard crush when he's actually an adult. but it definitely would read creepy if you were reading it in today's modern novel.
Yeah.
There was the section where he sees her leg, like the wind blows her skirt, and you see her leg, and he gets angry. He's like, "Oh my gosh, someone
dare
could
you."
see that!"
Yeah.
Like, he gets mad. I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah. There's a lot of
Yeah. He didn't call the police in at all. Yeah.
Well, Hugo does tend to carry everything to the extreme in every sense, and Marius is one of those characters who really, really does that because he's a young man and he's a passionate man. And so he just had this passion of almost angelic worship of Thénardier, like associated with his father. So he didn't know either of them. He just had this image in his mind, of a pact. He had an oath. And so that we know that means a lot to him. When he gives his devotion to something, he really gives his devotion to it. And it's just so Hugo, so romantic to have this block in your mind because of you have like a moral conviction that you just can't get past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then
I was too, Krista. Yeah, I was like, how do you not recognize him?
Or like anyone in the family. He didn't recognize any of them. It's like,
I mean, I could kind of see if they've all been malnourished and not eating, then maybe they all look really skinny and worn down and but at the same time, yeah, it was weird. And then also, yeah, he does like to hold his cards close to his chest, so maybe there's that too.
Yeah, that could be.
I would hate to play Valjean in chess. I would hate to. He would beat me in like 3 moves. He's just so smart and such a strategist. Even when it comes to like having a sod coin. Like, who does that? Who, plans ahead like that? Valjean. It's just...
We see again in that section that he had, what was the metaphor he used? That he had different tools in his toolbox, basically.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the quote was now, but it was really good. Because he was a convict, he had certain abilities.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh my goodness. He is just so clever and so smart all the time. And that's what's kept him alive or on the run for so long without being caught. The fact that as soon as Javert's in the room, he's like able to be not acknowledged as Valjean. And then as soon as he's like, okay, I'm going to write my report, he jumps out the window. It's like, okay. Still didn't know that he had, Valjean in the room. But, man.
But he did say, oh, that was probably the worst one.
He thought it was like one of the gang, and it's like, oh, you have no idea.
Yeah, if you only knew.
If you only knew.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Oh,
irony.
Man.
Yeah.
But when he put the hot iron or the hot poker on his arm, and just to like show them that like you can torture me, but it's not going to make me react, I was like cringing. That was all like, so awful. But it was just like very dramatic. But at the same time, I was like, man, this guy's going to show them that he's like, you cannot torture me and get information like an address out of me to get money. It was incredible. But wow. Like, do you want to die right now? Because that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, Javert not recognizing him was also weird to me. I think Hugo he only wants the characters to recognize each other like at certain times, and it just wasn't the time yet, But it is like logically, it's like, how would they not recognize each other?
Yeah. Like at least like voices. Voices are very distinct.
Yeah. Do you think Javert was just too busy like trying to stop the Tharniers from like attacking?
Mm-hmm.
Like because he was coming in there and what the information he'd been told was that they were going to kill someone he didn't know the information of who they were going to kill, but they were going to kill someone, and there was a gang of people going to kill someone. So they come in and they're trying to stop the gang, and then they're like, "Oh, here's the victim. Let's catch the gang first, and then we'll talk to the victim." And then by the time that they're doing that, the victims disappeared. So like, do you think that was just their top priority was let's arrest the gang first and like cuffs on them all because of that? So they weren't even acknowledging who the victim was. It was just, oh, there's the victim. We're not going to deal with him right now.
It could be. Yeah. It could be that he was just distracted.
Yeah. It was like secondary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Famous gang. Even with their masks on.
Well, the criminals that were helping Thénardier were notorious criminals already. Like they were known as like the underbelly of society kind of criminals. So the police would have known who that gang was. So I think, that's a good explanation that Javert would have been like focused on them and not realized who that was that got away.
And he probably was like, yes, I caught them. I got these amazing people, another star on my record.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how he likes to, do his job well.
Yeah, for once he is actually doing his job. Tracking down actual criminals.
Criminals, Javert. Get the actual ones. The real ones.
People who are actually hurting people. They're like, oh, we'll get 5 or 6 years. I think that was what they said when they were talking about it before. It was like, seriously, they're going to get 5 or 6 years for doing that?
That's crazy.
And then Valjean's going to get like life because of, just pretending to not be Valjean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, he definitely was eager to get those criminals. He did not want them to get away. It just shows the injustice again. Like, this book is all about showing injustice, I think. And showing that I think Hugo's trying to show that God gives injustice. I think that's his worldview. Like, or God gives justice to those who are unfortunate or to people who deserve it. Because like Javert's trying to give human justice, I think, is what Hugo's trying to say. At least that's my perspective on it. I don't know if I always agree with that, but at the same time, that's my perspective on it.
Hi, Rich.
Hi, Rich.
Hello.
Yes, that's a good. I hadn't thought of it that way, Naomi, as far as like that being a theme. But because, well, I don't know, we do also have many unfortunates who don't get justice, right? So I don't know if we can say absolutely that that's Hugo's message necessarily, like across the board, but I see where you're going with that. That's an interesting idea. I'll have to mull that over a little bit more.
I can see the main characters who do not get justice getting justice by non-conventional means, at least. So, like Marius getting justice in some ways, or like, I don't know. It's interesting, at the very least, to see that through that. I'm not sure.
Well, and yeah, he definitely criticizes all of the human means of justice. Like, that's like almost inarguable. Like, he actually criticizes at one point, he criticizes Louis, all the Louis. He criticizes all the Louis at one point.
September's our final review. I'm sure we'll be all thoughts on there.
Yeah. It is.
Right. Yeah, Chris, so that's what I was thinking. Like, we have many examples of characters who just have a bad lot in life, right? And who just get trampled by life. Fantine is one. I think Eponine as well. Because the Thénardier's kids are also innocents. Like, they are just born into this corrupt family, right? They had no choice in the matter. And we see that that's just their lot in life, and how it affects them. So there's some.
I could kind of see Fantine getting justice, if you want to call it that, by like, or getting mercy, maybe would be a nice way to say it, by like being given a nice bed and like being fed for her last days, kind of like given her a reprieve from the streets when it was too late for anything else, maybe in a way, because that's something that at the end of her life she did get. But I'm like, but at the same time, she didn't get, her final justice against the society.
Yeah, she did not.
And with Eponine, I don't know how the book ends with her, but I'm hoping that something will come about. But I could also see Victor Hugo going along the lines of, if your parents taught you to be a criminal, then you deserve to be a criminal. I could maybe see that be where he might go with that family. So we can see where that goes, because I don't know where that family storyline will go with those girls, because their son was not taught that way, and he's been very happy. So we'll see. Or who knows?
Mm-hmm. We'll see. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because Hugo does show. I think Hugo contradicts himself a lot, and I think that's where the confusion can be. Because we have two examples, right? We have people who are portrayed as like genuinely good, and we have people who are portrayed as genuinely bad, like inherently evil. However, Hugo also kind of wants to show like the environment affecting if they're good or bad, but also but he also kind of contradicts that too with like the Thénardiers. Like they have chances, but they make choices to like put themselves into poverty, So it's interesting. Yeah, I think he contradicts himself in many ways as far as that. At least that's what I see.
It's a very complex book, isn't it? He goes a lot of ideas and he kind of throws them all at it, which makes it very interesting. I think it'd be interesting to do like an author study through Les Miserables, which I would not do because I think that'd be very heavy. But I think it would be interesting to see someone else do that, because I'm like I said, I don't want to do that work. But he has a lot of theories and a lot of philosophy put into this book about his mentality.
Mm-hmm. I was reading something about Marius being actually more representative of Hugo's journey from like politically, which I would have to do more research about. But I was reading a little summary, and it was talking about how Marius was from like inheriting the old regime, the old monarchy, to going to like his views change, right, to the new republic, and how Marius is actually very similar to Hugo's own political journey. So we might see some maybe autobiographical qualities maybe in Marius perhaps, and Hugo.
I also saw something about how Marius is kind of reflective of Hugo's poverty too, because Hugo went through a year of severe poverty as well before his literary success took off. So he went through that extreme poverty too. So he kind of lived what Marius went through. So it's interesting to see that as well.
Yeah. That's more proof.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to talk about in the comments? Or anyone who's watching, or Victoria or Christy?
I don't know.
I'm looking at my notes here.
Yeah.
I didn't have very many, sadly.
I know. I felt like I didn't have that many either. I feel like most of the stuff I want to talk about was at the end, which we've already talked about the last chapter a lot. Last book. This book is so hard to talk about. Yeah. Marius lived in poverty because he was stubborn and didn't accept help from his grandfather. Yeah. Very stubborn. And Hugo did the same thing with his father. So that was very reflective of Hugo's personal life. That's what I read.
Interesting.
And then the poverty. of the Thenardiers. Yeah, continuing to scam people.
Yeah.
Their choices.
It did say at one point that the inn that they were running would have done well in like another setting, but like in the particular place where they were, it was just not a good place for them to be. So they made some poor business decisions as well. And maybe there wasn't, there may not have been a way to tell that it was a poor business decision or not. But regardless, that's what he said. So
yeah.
So we're getting to the July Revolution. Ooh. I found that section interesting. What?
I said, oh, snap.
Oh, snap? Yeah.
And this was a big section, so we've all got to buckle down and like read it. It's a long one comparatively to the last one. So
yeah.
We can do this, everyone. We can do this.
You've made it this far.
Do we need another 24-hour readathon?
My goodness, we might. The get rich quick guy who always falls for those
schemes.
Yep.
Exactly. Yes. And I did put a reading schedule for the next section on the Discord. So there is a daily reading schedule for part 4, if you're looking for it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Did anybody listen to any podcasts about this section?
I did not. I really want to.
I know, me too.
Krista, did you? I know Krista was following along with the podcast a bit. Or Amanda. Maybe Amanda and Krista were.
I'm going to try download some before I go camping on Thursday, and then I'll try listening to some. So I'll have time then when I'm not busy working and doing life. So we'll see.
Nice. Nice. He has like a lot of, he really tracks the fall of the restoration. Ooh. Oh, nice. Did it have, was there anything interesting in there on this section? I'm curious. I thought it was interesting that he sort of tracked the different revolutions and gave them kind of different characters. He said like, early revolutions will pick one leader, and then later revolutions will pick dynasties and stuff like that. I just his study of revolution was interesting, but I don't know how accurate it is because, as we know, sometimes he writes historical fiction instead of history,
and he pretends that it's real.
Yeah.
Honestly, I feel like people who read these, or people who would have read this, would be like, oh, that's so strange. I don't remember it like that. And we're like, oh, that sounds right. That's not right.
Oh, nice.
Politics. That would be interesting to listen to. I should definitely try listening to that one.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah. There we go. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd love to know more about that. I did find that really interesting.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like with this section in particular, it was hard to find like drive to listen to it or to read it. So that's why things like this would be helpful. So good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm writing down this podcast. I need to hear it.
All right. And it's helped you through the novel. That's good. We will need probably a little bit of help to get through the I will put it on the screen, Tammy, quickly. So it's this one here. Yeah. Nice. I think the next one's going to be all about the French Revolution, but if I'm remembering how the order of it should go.
Ooh, I'm excited.
Yes.
I always enjoy the sections that are about the French Revolution.
I'm sure it'll be really interesting, but I'm also wondering how historically accurate it will be or inaccurate it will be.
True. I need to do some side research.
I'm thinking the second half of the book will be more action-packed just naturally because we're going to be seeing wars and battles. So I think we're going to get more action, more plot forward.
Although on my reel, somebody said, my reel was pretty much like, wait till you get to this and this and
Oh
this,
yeah, that's
every
right.
hard section. Somebody commented, wait until you get to the sewers. So I know there's more coming.
Sewers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
I think it's going to be
sewers.
interesting.
Well, watch out for those sewers.
Yeah.
Well, should we wrap it up here? I don't think we have much more to talk about. Unless we want to brace ourselves for the next long chunk. However, it should be interesting. I think it will, if it's about the French Revolution. So, fingers crossed, right? It'll be a lot more plot. I hope that's the plan for Hugo's novel. Well, thank you everyone for joining us and watching and commenting. We will be doing this again in 2 weeks for the, Saint Denis? I don't know how to pronounce that.
Saint Denis, perhaps.
Saint Denis? And it's a long one. It's a long title one. Anyways, volume 4. It's a long title for that one. But anyways, we shall be discussing that one on the end of the month. So we'll see you all there. Bye.
Hi, everybody.
Bye.